Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, here with our resident expert, and today we are getting into a really fascinating profile.
Yeah, we really are. It's a good one today.
So I want to start by asking you, the listener, to picture a specific person in your life. We all know at least one.
Oh, definitely.
Maybe it's a colleague or a partner or, a parent. They're the person who checks the itinerary like 3 times before you even leave for the airport.
The one who double checks the locks on the doors.
Exactly. Or they're the one who goes completely quiet in a meeting right before things go off the rails. It's almost like they can smell the smoke before anyone else even sees the fire.
Right. And we usually label these people as worriers.
Yeah, worriers, overthinkers. We tell them to just relax.
Which is pretty ironic, isn't it? Because usually the only reason we get to relax is because they are doing all the worrying for us.
That is so true. And that is exactly where we are going today. We're looking at a report from the Max Energy ME80 personality system that completely reframes this kind of behavior.
It flips the script entirely.
It really does. So today's deep dive is pulling from the ME80's WFWU profile. The headline for this personality is the gentle protector.
A gentle protector.
Right. And our mission today is to figure out why this profile is considered the ultimate safety line for a family or a company. And honestly, to look at the massive emotional tax they pay to keep that line intact.
It is a heavy topic, but a necessary one. If you look at the source material, the WFWU isn't just nervous. That's a very surface-level reading.
Right, people just think they're anxious.
Exactly. But when you dig into the mechanics of their energy, you realize they're literally engineered to absorb stress so that the system around them doesn't break down.
Before we get into the really heavy stuff, let's just set the stage for you guys listening. We are pulling this from the Max Energy ME80 personality system. And for anyone who isn't familiar, this isn't just your standard internet personality test. It's an energy management system.
Right. It looks at how people process information and emotion on a metabolic level. It's less about quirky personality traits and much more about energy flow, like where does the energy go and how is it processed?
And for the WFWU, that flow is just fascinating. So let's start with that core definition, which the report calls hero declaration.
Okay, let's hear it.
It says the WFWU uses sensitivity and unease to guard everyone's safety line.
Uses unease.
Right. That word unease, it really stuck out to me because usually we think of unease as a flaw, something you need to fix or medicate. But this report treats it like a tool.
And that is the key insight right there. For the gentle protector, unease is data. It's not a bug in their system.
It's a feature.
Exactly, it's a feature. The report defines their primary operating mechanism as risk perception combined with emotional carrying.
Emotional carrying.
Right, think of it this way. Most people walk into a room and look for opportunities. You know, who to talk to, what's on the buffet, what they can achieve.
Sure, standard networking.
But the WFWU walks in and immediately scans for structural integrity.
Structural integrity, like is the vibe off?
Precisely. They're asking, is that person in the corner about to snap? Is this plan actually viable? They are the structural engineers of the social world.
That is a great way to put it. Structural engineers.
And this safety line concept is crucial here. The report states they would rather bear additional unease themselves than let others absorb direct impact.
Wow.
They are the bumper on the car. The bumper is designed to take the dent so the passengers inside don't get hurt.
And they just volunteer for that.
Basically, yes. Subconsciously, usually. They volunteer to be that bumper between order and chaos.
I mean, that sounds noble, but it also sounds exhausting. Being a human bumper doesn't sound like a super fun way to live.
It absolutely comes with a cost, which we will get to later.
Yeah.
But first, you have to understand how they actually control their environment.
Okay, lay it on us.
The report talks about their global view.
Yeah.
This isn't about micromanaging to get power. They aren't trying to be the boss.
Right, they aren't the loud authoritarian yelling orders at everyone.
No, not at all. Their method is described as gentle yet restrained. They are sensing warning signs way before the explosion actually happens.
So they're playing defense.
Yeah, their goal is to create what the report calls buffers and retreats.
Buffers and retreats. Unpack that for me. What does that look like in practice?
It means they are obsessed with the soft landing.
Okay.
If a team is planning a project launch, the WFWU is the one asking, okay, but if the server crashes on day one, what exactly do we tell the customers?
They want the contingency plan.
Always. They ensure there's an exit strategy and a buffer zone so that if plan A completely fails, nobody gets crushed. They're constantly engineering a way out of trouble for everyone else.
It's interesting because from the outside looking in, this can totally look like pessimism.
Oh, absolutely.
It can look like they are just dragging the vibe down. People probably tell them, why are you always bringing up the worst case scenario?
But you have to realize, to them, that is not pessimism. That is love. That is protection. They are asking the hard questions now so you don't have to face a disaster later.
Let's get into the technical side of this. The Max Energy System uses a really specific analogy for the WFWU's energy matrix. It calls their personality a flexible protective membrane.
I love this analogy. It is the best way to visualize how they operate.
Like a cell membrane.
Exactly. Imagine a biological cell. It has a wall, a membrane. That membrane is highly sensitive. It decides what gets in and what stays out.
Right.
But it's also flexible. If you poke it, it just indents. It doesn't shatter like glass, it stretches.
The report uses a phrase here that is barely translated but very visceral. It says they convert outside sharpness into internally digestible pressure.
Outside sharpness. Think of a jagged comment from a boss, or a sudden drop in the stock market, or even a tense family argument at dinner.
Things that cut.
Right. That is sharp. It cuts. Most people, when they encounter sharpness, they deflect it. They fight back or they run away.
Fight or flight.
Exactly. But the gentle protector absorbs it.
They just let it hit the membrane.
They let it hit. The membrane stretches. They take that sharp, jagged external conflict and they metabolize it into internal pressure.
So they're taking on the stress.
Yes, they hold the tension inside their own body so that the atmosphere in the room remains calm.
So when you see a WFWU sitting quietly in a chaotic meeting, looking perfectly calm,
they are churning on the inside. They are literally digesting the stress of the room.
That explains so much. I want to break this down using the 4 layers the ME80 system provides. The IP, IQ, EQ, and manifestation layers. I think this really helps explain why they do this, not just that they do it.
It's the mechanics behind the behavior.
Right. So layer 1 is the IP layer, the inner value layer. For the WFWU, this is defined as risk perception activation.
This is their baseline. This is the operating system running in the background 24/7.
Always on.
Always on. Before they even have a conscious thought or feeling, their fundamental state is scanned for risk. It's a radar that never powers down. They can't just turn this off when they go home on the weekend.
They're constantly assessing the safety of their environment.
It's like living in a control tower. They're just watching the blips on the screen all day.
Okay, so then we move to layer 2, the IQ layer, which is emotional activation. The definition here is intuition and speed judgment. Now, I have to challenge this a bit.
Go for it.
We've been talking about them being careful, methodical, maybe even hesitant. But this says speed.
And this is a massive misconception people have about them. We conflate acting slowly with thinking slowly.
Oh, I see.
The WFWU is actually an incredibly fast processor when it comes to emotional data and threat detection.
So the radar ping is instant.
Instant. Flash judgment. They know something is wrong. The absolute second they walk in the door, they pick up on micro-expressions, tone shifts, tiny atmospheric changes.
You see it all immediately.
Yes. The slowness that people see on the outside, that comes later. That's the decision-making phase. But the intuition, it is lightning fast. They're often 10 steps ahead of everyone else in realizing there was a problem.
Okay, so incredibly fast radar. Layer 3 is EQ, the decision calculation layer. And the report defines this as emotional perception and resonance.
Resonance is the key word there. They don't just observe your emotion from a distance. They resonate with it, like a tuning fork.
Meaning they feel it themselves.
Literally. If you are stressed, they physically feel that stress in their own body. This is why they are so highly motivated to fix the problem.
Because it hurts them too.
Because they are carrying your pain. They cannot relax until you relax, because your tension is vibrating in their system.
Which perfectly leads to the final output. Layer 4, the manifestation layer. The report says the direction of their energy is inward, and the actions are carrying, absorbing, and integrating.
Notice what is missing from that list.
Yeah, there's no projecting or commanding.
Exactly, no dominating. Their energy flows in. They are a container. They take all that fast data from the IQ layer, all that resonance from the EQ layer, and they pull it inside to process it.
So that's why they seem so quiet.
It's not an empty silence, it's a processing silence. They are running complex simulations in their head.
Like, if I say this, will she get mad?
Right. If we do that, will the project fail? They're doing all the heavy lifting internally, so the external output is perfectly safe.
This leads perfectly into the deep analysis section of the report. Specifically, a trait they call advanced boundary guarding.
This is their absolute superpower. Advanced meaning they do it beforehand. They are looking one layer deeper and thinking one step ahead of the group.
But this is also where the conflict with the rest of the world happens, isn't it? The report calls it reframing slowness. Because in a fast-paced business world, or honestly even just a busy family morning, the gentle protector can look like a bottleneck.
Oh, completely. You're waiting for them to make a decision, and they're just pausing.
Right, it's the "why haven't you clicked send yet" moment, or "why are you hesitating to book the flight?" To a high-speed go-go-go personality, this just looks like procrastination. Or fear.
But the expert analysis corrects us here.
It does. It says this is not sluggishness.
No, it is slow confirmation. They are engaging in the deepest system and relationship responsibility. They are simulating every outcome.
They're the only ones asking, wait, if we launch this new feature on Friday, are we going to burn out the support team over the weekend?
They're checking the parachute while everyone else is already jumping out of the plane.
That is exactly it.
And that pause, that hesitation you find so annoying. That is them saving you from a broken leg. They are double-checking the locks to ensure that when you do move, you move safely.
However, and this is the heavy part of the report I mentioned earlier, every superpower has a shadow.
They always do.
You cannot be a flexible membrane absorbing sharpness forever without consequences. The report identifies a shadow blind spot, and it calls it excessive inward turning.
This is the real danger zone for the WFWU.
Yeah.
We established that their energy flows inward. They absorb pressure. But what happens if the pressure just keeps coming and there is no release valve?
What happens when the container gets completely full?
Well, logic suggests it explodes.
Right, they snap.
For some profiles, yes. They scream, they quit, they fight. But for the gentle protector, it implodes.
It implodes.
The report says when their guardianship drive lacks an outlet, they infinitely magnify negative possibilities within their own mind.
The infinite magnification, that sounds exactly like the 3 a.m. spiral.
It is the definition of the 3 a.m. spiral. Because they have such a vivid imagination for risk, if they are stressed out or isolated, that imagination turns against them.
They start inventing catastrophe scenarios that haven't even happened yet.
Playing out entire movies in their head where everything goes wrong and it's all their fault.
And because their core instinct is to protect others from unease,
They don't tell anyone.
they just keep it to themselves.
That's the tragedy of it. The report says they vertically compress pressure inward. They literally think, if I tell my team I'm drowning, I'm just adding to their stress. And my job is to be the buffer. So they stay completely silent.
Self-blame, anxiety accumulation, and hidden emotional exhaustion. The report is very specific about the consequences. It says they lack outward help-seeking habits.
They simply don't know how to ask for help. They view asking for help as a fundamental failure of their core function.
Like, if the lifeguard asks for help, who is watching the pool?
That is their exact internal logic.
So if you are listening to this and you identify as a WFWU, or you know one, the actionable advice here seems pretty clear. You have to build a release valve. You have to let some of that pressure out before it compresses into something toxic.
Absolutely. You cannot be the protective membrane for the entire world. You need a safe place to discharge that sharpness you've been absorbing.
Let's pivot to how this looks out in the wild. First up, social relationships. The report calls them the gentle gatekeeper.
I really love the description of them in social settings. They aren't usually the center of attention. They aren't the ones dancing on the tables at the party.
No, but they are the excellent emotional buffer. The report says they are skilled at lowering others' defenses through listening.
You know that experience where you sit next to someone at a dinner party, someone who's kind of quiet, and 10 minutes later you realize you just told them your deepest childhood trauma?
Yes. And you walk away thinking, why on earth did I just say all that?
That is the WFWU magic. They create such a profound sense of safety and non-judgmental stability that people just unlock.
They anchor the room.
They do. Their presence literally lowers the ambient anxiety level of everyone around them.
It's like they emit a dampening field for stress.
They make it safe to be vulnerable because they are subconsciously signaling, I can handle your mess. I can hold this for you.
But let's talk business for a second, because I feel like in the corporate world, gentle is very often misread as weak.
Unfortunately, yes.
We celebrate the disruptors, the sharks, the loud visionaries. Does the gentle protector actually add value to the bottom line?
Massive value. The report argues their core advantage is risk perception power. Just think about how expensive a mistake is in business. a PR disaster, a product recall, a massive lawsuit.
Or a whole team walking out because of a toxic culture.
Exactly. Those things cost millions of dollars. The WFWU is the natural warning system for all of that. They identify relationship cracks and subtle emotional risks way before action is ever taken.
They're the ones who pull you aside and say, hey, I really don't think the client liked that joke.
Or, if we change this PTO policy, the engineering team is going to completely revolt.
So they prevent minor local friction from evolving into system harm?
That's the exact phrase, early cooling and buffering. If you are a CEO, you desperately need a gentle protector in your inner circle.
Because if everyone is just a yes man,
Or a visionary who only ever sees the upside, you are driving a race car without brakes. You need the person who actually sees the cliff. You need that anchor point.
the report actually recommends 4 specific professional fields where this profile thrives. I want to run through these real quick because they make so much sense given everything we've discussed. First up is safety warning.
This is the most literal application of their skills. Risk control, safety management, compliance. Roles where the actual job description is foresee trouble and stop it.
They are naturally gifted at it.
Because they are already doing it in their heads 24/7 anyway. They see the accident before it happens.
Field 2 is interpersonal support.
Things like HR, conflict mediation, team psychological building. Because of that resonance we talked about in the EQ layer, they can genuinely see both sides of a conflict.
They can validate everyone's feelings and actually find the middle ground.
They are the glue that keeps a highly stressed team from fracturing. They're the ones who ensure that the company culture actually survives the busy season.
Field 3 is quality guardianship.
This goes right back to the advanced boundary guarding, quality control, process audit, lean production. They have the immense patience required to look at the tiny details that other people find incredibly boring.
Why do they care about the details so much?
Because they know that a detail is where the devil lives. They know that one loose screw brings down the entire machine. So they are the ultimate quality assurance. They simply won't sign off until they know for a fact it is safe.
And finally, Field 4 is back-end support.
Roles requiring extremely high stability and patience. They can handle the repetitive, detailed work that would absolutely drive a high-energy manifestation type crazy.
Because the WFWU views that work as maintaining the foundation.
Right. They take deep pride in the stability of the system. They are the ones who make sure the payroll goes out on time, every single time, without any drama.
It really is a comprehensive picture of someone who just keeps the world turning without demanding any credit for it.
That is their defining characteristic.
Right.
They do not seek the spotlight. In fact, the spotlight makes them highly uncomfortable. They want the result of safety, not the recognition for it.
They're happy if the day ends and nothing bad happened.
A boring day is a wildly successful day for them.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the WFWU Gentle Protector, I want to leave our listeners with the golden sentence from the conclusion of the report. It just sums this up so beautifully.
It really does. It says, when conflicts are resolved and accidents avoided while everything appears natural, the Gentle Protector's value truly surfaces. They are not under the spotlight, but allow more people to safely continue forward.
While everything appears natural, that is the magic trick, isn't it? If a WFWU does their job perfectly, absolutely nothing happens.
Right. No crisis, no big fight, no crash.
And because nothing happened, nobody even notices that they did anything at all.
That is the ultimate paradox of their existence. Their greatest success looks like nothing. It just looks like a normal Tuesday. But that normal Tuesday was engineered by 1,000 tiny adjustments and emotional absorptions that they performed without you ever seeing.
So if you are listening to this and things in your life are running suspiciously smoothly,
Take a look around.
you might just spot a gentle protector quietly doing their work. Now, to leave you with a final thought to mull over, if the gentle protector's entire identity is tied up in absorbing stress and sensing risk, what happens to them when they are put in an environment with absolutely no risk? Do they start inventing chaos just to have something to guard against?
Oh, that is a fascinating question to explore on your own.
Something for you to chew on. This deep dive was based on the WFWU profile from the Max Energy ME80 personality assessment. It's a really incredible system for understanding the hidden mechanics of the people around us.
And ourselves. If you recognized yourself in today's description, especially that part about the internal implosion, it is definitely worth exploring further. Understanding your own energy matrix is the very first step to managing that pressure.
Absolutely. If you want to know more about your own profile, you can visit www.maxenergylife.com. You can also search for Max Energy or Mattergy on Facebook to find their community and resources.
There's a ton of depth there to uncover.
To all the gentle protectors listening out there, we see you. We appreciate the buffers you build and the unease you carry so the rest of us don't have to.
Thank you for keeping the safety line intact.
And for everyone else, thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We will see you next time.